Ladies and gentlemen, imagine for a moment that you are walking through a crowded marketplace. Voices calling, music playing, merchants waving their hands, trying to pull you into their world. Each of them promises something: happiness, success, recognition. And so you move from one stall to another, chasing after the next thing that might finally make you feel complete. But what if I told you that this entire marketplace is an illusion? That the very act of searching outward is what keeps you from ever finding what you seek? You see, the greatest misunderstanding we have in life is that our worth, our happiness, and our fulfillment are out there somewhere waiting for us. We are conditioned to believe that by focusing on others, by seeking their approval, by aligning with their expectations, we will somehow find ourselves. But this is like a wave in the ocean trying to find the sea. The truth is far simpler, yet far more difficult to accept. Everything you are looking for is already within you. And we are distracted, endlessly pulled in 100 different directions, worrying about what others think, comparing our journey to someone else's, measuring ourselves against illusions of success and perfection. And yet, the only real power you have, the only true transformation you will ever experience comes not from chasing, but from stopping, from turning inward, from realizing that you were never lost to begin with. So, let's ask the question, what happens when you stop seeking validation? What happens when you no longer care about impressing the crowd, about keeping up, about fitting into the endless game of status and significance? You begin to see, truly see. You see that the moment you stop chasing, the moment you focus on yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of self-realization, you awaken to something profound. You see that you were never meant to be a copy of someone else's expectations, but an expression of life itself. And here's the paradox. The more you focus on yourself, not in arrogance, not in isolation, but in true presence, the more everything else begins to align. The more your relationships become genuine, your purpose becomes clear, and life itself begins to feel effortless. Because life isn't about proving yourself, it's about being yourself. And once you master that, everything else falls into place. So the real question is, are you ready to step out of the marketplace? Are you ready to stop seeking and start being? Because the moment you do is the moment you are finally free. The illusion of external validation is one of the greatest traps of human existence. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to seek approval from our parents, our teachers, our peers, and eventually society as a whole. We learn to measure our worth by the reactions we receive, the praise we accumulate, and the roles we play in the grand theater of social expectations. And so, we chase it. We mold ourselves into shapes that fit the desires of others, believing that in their acceptance we will find fulfillment. But this is the trick of the mind, the illusion that keeps us running in circles, never quite arriving anywhere. Because the very act of seeking validation places our sense of self outside of us, in the hands of others, making us prisoners of opinions, expectations, and fleeting approval. Consider for a moment the absurdity of this chase. You dress in a certain way, speak in a certain manner, pursue certain goals, not because they are truly yours, but because they align with what you believe others will admire. You become a mirror reflecting the desires of the world rather than a light illuminating your own path. And yet, no matter how much approval you collect, it never quite feels enough. The applause fades, the admiration shifts, and suddenly you find yourself restless, needing the next wave of recognition to feel whole again. It is an endless hunger that can never be satisfied because its very foundation is false. True fulfillment does not come from being seen, but from seeing yourself clearly, independent of external judgment. The moment you stop seeking validation, you realize you never needed it to begin with, and in that realization, you become untouchable. The art of being present is the simplest yet most overlooked key to a fulfilled life. We live in a world that constantly pulls us away from the now. Our minds are either tangled in the regrets of the past or racing toward an imagined future. We chase goals, success, and recognition. believing that happiness is always just around the corner, just one more achievement away. But have you ever noticed that no matter how much you accomplish, no matter how many milestones you reach, the feeling of lasting fulfillment remains elusive? It is because life is not happening in the past nor in the future. It is only ever unfolding in the present. And the more you ignore it, the more it slips through your fingers like sand. To be present is not simply to exist in a moment, but to fully experience it without resistance. It means letting go of the mental noise that constantly demands your attention and returning to the only reality that truly exists, the one happening right now. It is in this moment that all fears dissolve, because fear only exists in the realm of the imagined. It is in this moment that you experience joy without condition, because joy is not something you attain, it is something you access when you stop seeking elsewhere. But most of all, it is in this moment that you are free. Free from the weight of expectation, free from the chains of regret, free from the illusion that something is missing. When you learn to focus on yourself in the now, you begin to see that everything you were searching for was already here, waiting for you to notice. Detachment from the noise is not about escaping the world, but about seeing it clearly without being controlled by it. Everywhere you turn, there is a flood of voices, society telling you who you should be, advertisements convincing you that you are incomplete, endless distractions pulling you away from yourself. It is a constant bombardment, a storm of opinions, judgments, and illusions that keep you entangled in things that do not truly matter. And so you move through life reacting to praise, to criticism, to expectations, as if your existence is a puppet show controlled by invisible strings. But what happens when you cut those strings? What happens when you step back and realize that none of this noise is actually you? There is a great power in stepping away, in observing without being consumed, in engaging with the world without being defined by it. This does not mean isolation. It means clarity. It means recognizing that external chaos does not have to become internal chaos. It means understanding that the opinions of others are simply echoes of their own perceptions, not reflections of your truth. The moment you detach from the need to please, impress, or conform, you begin to hear something far more important, the sound of your own inner voice. And it is in that stillness, in that space beyond the noise, that you reconnect with something real. You begin to make choices based on what aligns with your soul, not on what will gain approval. You no longer chase trends, validation, or fleeting pleasures because you see through them. And in doing so, you reclaim something most people never find, the ability to move through life with a quiet, unshakable power, untouched by the distractions that once ruled you. The paradox of self-discovery is that the more you focus inward, the more the world begins to align with you. We are taught that finding ourselves is an external journey, that by collecting experiences, achieving success, or gaining recognition, we will somehow arrive at a complete version of who we are. And so we chase endlessly. We run toward goals that were never truly ours. We seek meaning in relationships that reflect our own unhealed wounds, and we measure our worth through achievements that, once attained, leave us feeling just as lost as before. But what if the journey was never outward at all? What if everything you were looking for was simply buried beneath layers of conditioning, distractions, and false identities? When you stop looking for answers outside of yourself, something remarkable happens. Instead of molding yourself to fit the world, you begin to shape the world around you. You realize that when you truly align with who you are, without pretense, without performance, the right people, opportunities, and experiences naturally gravitate toward you. There is no longer a need to force things, because you are no longer moving against your own nature. This is the paradox. The more you focus on yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of deep authenticity, the more life begins to unfold effortlessly. The struggle fades. The constant need for validation disappears, and you finally experience the peace that was never in the external world to begin with. In focusing inward, you unlock the very thing you were seeking all along. Not a perfect version of yourself, but the freedom to simply be. And in that state of being, you realize that life was never something to conquer, but something to flow with. Freedom through inner mastery is the realization that true liberation does not come from changing the world around you, but from mastering the world within you. People spend their entire lives trying to control circumstances, seeking stability in relationships, careers, and external success, believing that once everything is in order, they will finally be free, but this is the great illusion. Freedom is not found in rearranging the outside world, because the outside world is in constant motion, always shifting beyond your control. If your peace depends on things remaining a certain way, you will always be a prisoner to circumstances. True freedom comes when you realize that nothing outside of you has the power to dictate your inner state unless you allow it. Mastering yourself does not mean suppressing emotions or forcing yourself into an artificial state of positivity. It means developing awareness, the ability to observe your thoughts, reactions, and desires without being controlled by them. It is recognizing that you are not your thoughts, not your fears, not the ever-changing emotions that pass through you. When you detach from these illusions, you begin to see with clarity. You no longer react impulsively, no longer let fear dictate your choices, no longer seek validation from a world that itself is lost in its own illusions. In this state, nothing can truly shake you, because you have built your foundation within. You can walk into chaos and remain centered, face uncertainty and remain at peace. And it is in this inner mastery that the greatest power is found, not power over others, not power over circumstances, but power over yourself. Because the one who is no longer controlled by anything is the only one who is truly free. The dance of life is not something to be controlled or conquered. It is something to be experienced. Yet most people move through life as if it were a problem to be solved, a series of goals to be achieved, or a struggle to be endured. They are always chasing, always waiting for some future moment where everything will make sense, where happiness will finally arrive. But life is not a linear path with a destination at the end. It is not a mountain to be climbed or a battle to be won. Life, in its purest form, is a dance, fluid, spontaneous, and ever-changing. And the moment you stop resisting and start flowing with it, everything begins to fall into place. Focusing on yourself does not mean shutting the world out. It means learning to move with it without losing your own rhythm. It means understanding that life is not happening to you, it is happening through you, in every breath, every decision, every unfolding moment. When you stop trying to force things, when you stop obsessing over outcomes and begin to trust the natural unfolding of life, you realize that you were never out of sync. The mind only made it seem that way. The more you focus inward, the more you align with your own flow, and in doing so, life itself begins to reflect that alignment. The right people, opportunities, and experiences find you, not because you chase them, but because you became the kind of person who naturally attracts them. The dance of life is not about control, it is about presence. And when you finally let go and allow yourself to move freely, you realize that the music was always playing, you just needed to start listening. And so the great paradox reveals itself. The moment you stop chasing, you arrive. The moment you stop seeking validation, you find yourself. The moment you focus inward, the world begins to align in ways you never expected. This is not magic, nor is it some secret formula for success. It is simply the nature of existence. Life is not something to be grasped, controlled, or conquered. It is something to be experienced, to be lived fully from the center of your own being. Focusing on yourself is not selfish. It is the only way to truly connect with life. When you detach from distractions, from external expectations, from the illusions that keep you trapped in cycles of seeking, you discover something profound. You were never incomplete. You were never lost. Everything you have been searching for, peace, joy, fulfillment, has been within you all along, waiting for you to see it So let this be the moment you stop running. Let this be the moment you stop trying to fit into a world that does not even understand itself. Instead, step fully into who you are, without hesitation, without apology. The world does not need another person trying to impress or conform. It needs someone who is fully alive, fully present, fully real. And that can only happen when you finally embrace the power of focusing on yourself.